Everyone, go see Megalopolis. If you don't end up liking it, pay for a ticket and show respect to a man who a lot of you claim directed some of the greatest films of all time. Because he still is, yes. The critics are quite inept when it comes to assessing Megalopolis. This upload and its comment section will be the official why if you claim to take this medium seriously, you are a flippant imbecile for dismissing Coppola's Megalopolis. Casual audiences, you want something familiar and recognizable, plot formula, character arcs, an actor getting over emotional and unrealistically dramatic, fine. But to those of us who want more out of the medium, who want to observe the funneling of human arts and culture into these temporal spaces, these conjured states of mind, these condensed memories of an experience which become influential upon one as they go forth throughout the subsequent days, Megalopolis will stand as one of the most vital films to be released during the 2020s. I can hear you all now. Oh no, Coppola has made mistakes. I know that. Most of you haven't even seen Twixt. I know Coppola garbage when I see it. Believe you me. And Coppola can still make mistakes. The film isn't perfect, but its accomplishments are awe-inspiring and some of the most exciting American cinema in a non-spectacle context. No Cameron, no superheroes, not even Dune, or over-invested in old-school landscape photography in some years now. Certainly where big budget Hollywood is concerned, at least. Too many people will have a knee jerk reaction of, no, the idea of this film being a major classic is too good to be true. It has to fail. Coppola has been too inconsistent since Apocalypse Now or Rumblefish or whatever you wish to cite. How can he direct another classic? First of all, Coppola has some odd priorities at times. True. Cronenberg genuinely wanted to direct Fast Company. De Palma genuinely wanted to direct Wise Guys. Coppola genuinely wanted to direct all those post-Rumblefish mediocre 80s features. He has a soft spot for that sort of material, even if those of us who champion his best films do not. 1992's Dracula is one of Coppola's most compelling films, and 2007's Youth Without Youth is really underrated. That film was certainly making a case for Coppola's genius still flourishing in the 21st century. Twixt in 2011 I cannot remotely account for, obviously. But Coppola seemingly wanted to make Megalopolis more than any of these other 21st century works, and it does show. Coppola treats all of the events of his original narrative very, very seriously, and yet he does not waste time in developing their personalities. This is not totally relevant. What is more important is the players as wider archetypes in presenting a series of socio-political cultural ideas during the runtime. If this is not your thing, even those praising the film sometimes question the efficiency of distilling socio-political messages via cinema as opposed to some text or even just a political campaign or activism period, then so be it. Although those who consider themselves more in tune with the medium, I am disgusted at the idea that we must wag our index finger at Megalopolis for not following certain rules or expectations these audiences expect. Such as an obnoxious focus on character development. The film goes over many, many events during its narrative's runtime. Another film would have added extra scenes beefing up the characters' relationships and drama with one another, although Coppola, who probably filmed such scenes and then cut them out, deduced that these were not necessary, and the players are more important as archetypes than as distinct, believable, grounded, real-world personalities. It is called Megalopolis, a fable, not Megalopolis, a human drama about real-life personalities directed by Ken Loach, populated with non-professional actors. So accept this, grow up, and enjoy the fucking film. The visual dimension of this project is extraordinary, the finest application of computer graphics in an art film context, outdoing Lanthimos' Poor Things, which I was quite fond of from the last year, and setting a precedent that computer graphics can potentially enhance art film ambitions in a way that old school VFX were sometimes overly distracting or not seamless enough for, whereas CGI does have a lot of rich potential to anyone except these vague cultural Luddites. I know some have a knee-jerk reaction to computer graphics. I don't have contempt for these individuals whatsoever, but I do feel a degree of pity because they are withholding themselves from a vast new dimension of visual possibilities, and the idea that computer graphics will enable indulgences or fantastical excesses exclusively is simply not viable. CGI is absurdly expensive, to look remotely decent at least, so films and filmmakers have, for the very most part, no choice but to apply their computer graphics very tastefully, especially in films that are not composed almost entirely by blue or green screens. I feel as though Megalopolis will have some concern that certain expectations aren't being catered to. Those of you who split a feature film into little pathetic categories, story, acting, music, cinematography, etc., you people will be unhappy, but then you don't deserve to be happy, so this is a fine thing. I'm more interested in what a film is most excelling at, and if I happen to ignore all of the other elements of it, which might not meet some arbitrary standard that exists externally of me, and you and everyone else, by the way, we need to move on from second guessing ourselves about a film's achievements. Oh, but did they really develop the characters enough? Garbage that scum like Doug Walker told you about, that stuff doesn't matter. Some developed a system of assessing films to prove they were smarter than the average person because they could not remotely otherwise, and it basically failed. But other dumb people decided to adopt this method also to show up the normies and to apply a critical formula to every film they watched in order to think even less, somehow, than they did before. If you dare finger wag at Megalopolis, oh, it didn't develop its ideas enough, oh, I'm uncomfortable with its ideas because it isn't milquetoast millennial era virtue signaling cliches. My life is defined by making sure other people approve of my preordained bandwagon beliefs. Oh no, this movie is different from other movies, it must be inept. No, you're inept. The fact that Megalopolis is even 50% of the film it could have been, and it could have been a lot. It could have been the greatest film of all time had it come out earlier in a simpler time. 1980s through to even the 2000s perhaps. Although now it is perhaps true that Megalopolis' wide-reaching and all-encompassing concepts are too engulfing for our rather complicated, intricate, multifaceted contemporary, yet to blithely dismiss the film for not being 100% on point with its socio-political commentary is still to acknowledge that it is some 70% of the way there. I can see now the reviews which are mildly positive but which express hesitance, finger wag, yes, at the film's ambitions, implying films aren't allowed to be this ambitious, and Tree of Life gets a pass because of its obnoxious vagary / coward's way out of a concrete thesis arrogance. Yet Megalopolis, people are too tempted to fluff up their egos and try to tell Coppola, yes, Coppola, how it is done. Accept modesty in your life, embrace that Megalopolis was the work of a major visionary, arguably the most personal film Coppola ever made. Appreciate it as quasi-autobiographical, if you must so. Acknowledge that even the film succeeding 70% of the way is more artistic success than most films which even get 90% of what they are attempting accomplished. They weren't remotely as ambitious as Megalopolis, the most ambitious American film maybe of this century thus far, and aren't as nearly interesting to me. Let's all champion the best film of this year thus far. Not that I had much to compare it with, but I did really like Furiosa and Deadpool Wolverine and Alien Romulus we talked about rather recently. Megalopolis, along with Glazer's The Zone of Interest, Sokorov's Fairy Tale, Davies' Benediction, Villeneuve's Dune, haven't seen part 2 yet though, and Nolan's Tenet. One of the most compelling films of this decade thus far. If you think cinema is dead, it is because you want to troll the internet of the old canon, all the films released, rather than having to sift through what is coming out now, because it is easy to do the former. You are lazy. You would have thought cinema was dead in the 80s, 70s, 60s, if you were around then, and I think a part of you knows that deep down. Megalopolis is a magnificent film. If you want to knock it down a few pegs, think about why, it isn't doing this or this enough. But what of its accomplishments? I'll say it again, grow up, have some modesty, listen to what this man is trying to tell you, and learn that life can be enjoyed. Caring about what some of a personality thinks of you is weak, especially if you don't have a romantic or sexual relationship with them, and well, I mean that as a joke, but I think you get what I mean, right? Oh, and I guess speaking of that, morbidly and admittedly insensitively, I'm not interested in scandals bereft of the finished film itself, and neither are you unless you're concerned about superficial reputation curating. You didn't have a problem praising Polanski post-abuse, did you? You still don't have a problem with David Bowie's music, do you? Yet somehow an actor like John Wayne saying a predictably racist claim is more cause for alarm and puritanism because of superficial cultural forces, nothing more, nothing less. And you will know that. If you want to finger wag about Megalopolis here, feel free. I can cut your finger off, and you'll realise the futility of finger wagging at anything. You finger wag because it is fun for you. Moralising is not meant to be an entertaining action, it is meant to be a begrudging moment wherein we try to correct another person from what we feel is a moral error. I wish I didn't have to tell someone theft is not cool, but I might have to do it anyway. Do I enjoy telling a friend that they drink too much? Fuck no, it sucks, but sometimes I may have to suggest it. I don't enjoy it. Why would I? Why would anyone? Because they are a finger-wagging sociopath. Admit that moralizing is just leisurely entertainment and go about fixing yourself promptly. I, for what it is worth, I'm horrified by what Coppola may or may not have done on the set of Megalopolis, but I don't get a kick out of condemning it or any immoral act. Why? Because an immoral act has occurred. I wish it didn't. Exploiting suffering to project one's own allegedly superior morality is sometimes a larger sin than the crime committed, depending on what the crime was. Don't feel as though you cannot criticize Megalopolis here, but I will attempt to explain to you why you're wrong, if you try to cite your critique as anything except subjective preference. Maybe my love of Megalopolis is an expression of subjective preferences too, inherently. But I would insist that altering one's priorities will allow for a greater experience of life than you had known prior to this. Besides, don't you want to enjoy this film? I want to enjoy every film. It is a shame I do not. It really is. I try to see the best in every film, and so as a result, I choose to emphasize what works about Megalopolis. And so in choosing to embrace how I want to feel, I let the film's positive traits organically, seamlessly outweigh the negative traits. So-so performances, large ideas so enormous they might not be specific enough to any distinct historical moment, not as expansive or visually sweeping as it could have been in a Scott's Blade Runner sense, perhaps, to the point wherein I don't notice or care about the negative traits unless I go out of my way to think about what they were. It isn't that I don't notice them when I look for them, I just don't think to. And isn't that what one wants at the end of the day? Seriously? Oh, you just wanted it to be good. And you didn't? You didn't want to have a good time? No, I wanted to be critical and police its creative ambitions. Ooh. Go find a bunker to hide in and then make the world a better place, you fascist fruit. Megalopolis is a grand vision. Feel free to fight me on this. If you got guts, then bring it on.